How you doing, Pete?
Okay, thank you.
We are live as usual on a Monday night. How you been, mate?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, good to have you with us. Got Nero jumping on in a minute.
Yep.
I think he's going to talk about a footballing hero and a news reading hero, as we've got the sad news that George Alagiah has passed away after a long battle with cancer. Yeah, lovely guy, it would seem.
Yeah.
Very professional, all-round good guy, and not a hint of the Hugh Edwards about him. I hope not. You never know. They say you never meet your heroes; you'll only be disappointed. But George always seemed like such a decent chap, and I hope that that's true. You can sort of sometimes see it on someone's face. You can see the noor in their face sometimes, and he came across as a really decent guy. And we're going to chat to Nero about him. From a Sri Lankan background, like Nero, so maybe he can relate in some way. I know you don't really watch the BBC, or you watch it with a skeptical eye.
Well, I used to. I
Okay.
used to. So I remember that he came over in the way that you described him. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, Nero, welcome.
Hey.
This show is for you because I know you've lost two heroes today.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wouldn't say they were necessarily heroes as such. I just liked Terry Hall didn't. Sorry, Terry Hall. That's me, isn't it?
I've made a mistake already.
Look,
it's
Trevor
this
Francis.
chap. Who is this footballer?
Right. So that is Trevor Francis, and Trevor Francis was a Birmingham City player at one time, and I remember because of course I was growing up in Coventry, and we had the we had our our rivalry against Birmingham, and he was just a class act. He was such a class act, and then for someone such as Brian Clough to have seen that in him and think, you know what, I'm going to spend £1 million on this geezer to make a statement. Wow. This is, Brian Clough, and no one had ever done it at the time. No one ever spent that much money. It was he was the first £1 million player, and he went to Nottingham Forest, and I'm absolutely convinced he was one of the players that brought success to Nottingham Forest under Brian Clough's regime. But the other thing about Trevor Francis is that whichever team you supported, it was like my dad always used to go on about Emlyn Hughes, about Emlyn Hughes has been like a fan's favourite. Whatever team you supported, Emlyn Hughes was the guy that you always loved on any other team. And Trevor Francis was one of those. He was like, you couldn't really hate him for anything. He was just a gentleman off and on the pitch. When he scored some wonder goals. I remember goals that he used to score for England when he played. And the other thing about him is he was technically very, very gifted. He wasn't just a run, he had lots of energy, played football in the right manner. I remember him going into management, and I'll tell you, I think it was I heard a player on the radio today, Carlton Palmer, who played under Trevor Francis when he was a manager at Sheffield Wednesday. But initially he'd gone to Sheffield Wednesday in his latter years, and Carlton Palmer was saying how you could see that this guy, he didn't know much about him, but when he came to Sheffield Wednesday and saw him in his latter years, and thought, wow, what this guy must have been incredible when he was younger, and I can see why he was that £1 million worth of a player. But yeah, it's a sad loss. I didn't really know that he was ill or anything like that. And the last I heard, he was speaking on Talk Sport. So, and he seemed all right, but yeah, sad loss. And prior to that, I found out today that George, I can't even say his name now.
George Alagiah. There he is.
Alagiah,
MBE, I think he was awarded. And I was just saying there to Pete, unlike some BBC presenters, this guy, decent
guy.
Honest. I say comes across. Look, the TV is never a true representation. I know some people call it tell lie vision, but
Yeah.
some people, you look in their eyes and you can see the nur, the light
Yeah.
shining, and I think you
Yeah.
get that from George
Yeah.
Alagiah.
Exactly.
Is he a hero to the Sri Lankan community over here as
Yeah.
one of
I
the
think
most famous Sri Lankans or people of a Sri
yeah.
Lankan background on
I
UK
think
TV?
I think it's not that again that he's a hero. I think he's just seen as somebody who has, born in Sri Lanka, he's gone over to England, and he's, reintegrated within the UK system, and become an inspiration to maybe some other Sri Lankan, folk who want to like live that, shall I say, live, work, and fulfill British life. And at the same time, like I said to you, I was struggling earlier to think of other Sri Lankans who've come and made such an impact here in the UK, apart from, like sport, in cricket and things like that. I was thinking, well, who else? What other Sri Lankan has really come out and been a
Offhand,
celebrity?
there's a comedian who I think is a Sri
Yes,
Lankan background.
that's right.
Who am I
You're,
thinking of?
you're thinking of Russell Brown, I think it is. It's oh, is it Russell Brown? Okay. Someone told me. Someone told me about this. Oh, you mean Raja? Was it Rajesh? Yeah,
Rajesh.
yeah, Rajesh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Isn't he Sri Lankan background?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's the most recent
And
Sri Lankan.
and
Yeah,
of course Russell Brand as well is
Russell Brown.
a
Yeah,
quarter Sri Lankan, I think, eighth Sri
yeah.
Lankan.
And of course, when I was growing up, my dad used to talk to me about Arthur C. Clarke, who wasn't a Sri Lankan but who resided in Sri Lanka. Famous author on
Ceylon,
university.
as it was known back then.
Sorry,
Ceylon, as it was known back then.
Ceylon. Yeah, Ceylon.
Where do we get that
Yeah.
name from, Heroes? Sort it out for me. Why was Sri Lanka known to the Brits as Ceylon?
Well, if you wait 1 second, I'll get my mum on. Yeah, 1 second.
Brilliant. We're going
if she's up,
multi.
if she's up, if she's up. But
Oh, please
no,
don't disturb her. But we love
yeah,
to get knowledge from the elder
yes, yeah.
generation.
But
And
no, look,
look, George Alagiah, with a name like George, I am guessing he's a Christian Sri Lankan. Is he from the Christian community?
well, I found out doing some research today. He's actually from the Tamil community.
He is
Yeah,
but says Tamil
Well,
doesn't necessarily mean Hindu, does it? Or does that
exactly,
mean?
and that's why. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that he too. Yeah, I'm thinking like you that he was probably brought up in the Christian community. Interesting story about him is that he was born in Colombo, Sri Lanka, but then was educated predominantly in Ghana. And of course,
Wow.
in Ghana, yeah, and in Ghana, of course, you do have those kind of Christian names like George and all sorts like that. But and then he went to school in Portsmouth, and that's where he went to, I think, that's right, a Roman Catholic school, in Portsmouth. So yeah, that would explain probably his background. But like you said earlier, Jules, look, I don't know anything much about George Alagiah, but one thing I remember was when he first came on the news, and I remember first seeing him on the news. There was something about him I just thought very, very just humble, genuine, had a nice smile. He's the kind of person that when you meet, you'll go, I trust this bloke wholeheartedly, and he always, I remember, because he always finished the news off in this little, just in a very smiley kind of, in a way, you think, oh, what a decent guy, just decent guy. And even now, when I heard that he died today, and I thought, that's all I'll ever remember him for. A decent guy who was just honest and didn't do anything wrong. I mean, we don't know, but as far as I know, this guy did not do anything wrong at all. And with all the bad publicity recently within the BBC, this is a guy who's coming out. He's the other way, the good one of the good ones. Yeah,
100%. But look, I mean, I'm someone who's very critical of the BBC. Can we separate people from the job that they do? Like, for example, let's take it back to football. If this guy, the modern day multi-million pound footballer Mbappe, he might be heading to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Surely that's all about the money. Do you have blood on your hands if you go and work for Saudi Arabia? Do you have a little bit of blood on your hands if you work for the BBC that have been pushers of pro-war propaganda. They were known as the Bush and Blair Corporation when they were lying and telling lie upon lie upon lie to trick us into getting into the war in Iraq. I don't remember if George Alagiah was. I'm sure he was working for the BBC at that time, wasn't he? Is he not slightly responsible for the horrors of the war in Iraq if he was part of that propaganda machine? And
Yeah,
will Mbappe, is he responsible if he goes to Saudi Arabia and earns money from Saudi Arabia that it's a country that's bombing its next door neighbor, dropping weapons on people that are in the poorest country in the region?
yeah, that's a really it's a difficult question. Number one, about George Alagiah, I'm not too sure whether he was around at that time or not, and if he was, I'll be one of the things I always notice on the BBC is, of course, is that they always have various anchor men and women, and I don't know, if George Alagiah was a part of that kind of, at that point. So it'd be interesting to find that out.
He started out as a foreign correspondent, I think. He was on the ground elsewhere, and then he ended up in the studio.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, but good to check up on that. With regards Kylian Mbappe, I heard the news as well today, but the news coming from various sources at the moment is that it's a very clever move on the part of Real Madrid, who Kylian Mbappe really is favouring a move to go to, and he's doing everything he can to leave PSG to go to Real Madrid, but PSG were holding their stance and didn't want to let him go on they wanted him to stay at PSG forever. But Kylian had already made his mind up. They wanted a decision from him. He was stalling. And apparently, from what I'm gathering now, is that this is a deal actually that's been made between Real Madrid and the Saudis, where the Saudis will take Kylian Mbappe for this staggering amount of money. They'll buy him for the staggering amount of money that it will boost their league, his high profile, and PSG get the money that they were looking for. But it's only a 1-year contract, and at the end of which he will then be free to leave and go to Real Madrid. And I understand. Yeah, so this is the inside shady dealings that's going on now in football. However, talking about the regime of Saudi Arabia and all that, I remember asking you a question once before, and that was about this whole the Israeli-Palestine conflict. And I remember, I was saying to myself, here I am, who have a lot of Palestinian friends, and I'm very pro-Palestinian, pro what's going on in terms of Palestine, but equally, I'm sitting here watching Netflix, and there's this great Netflix series called Fauda, which is, of course, about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. And I remember going to my barber, who's Palestinian, and asking him, "Oh, what do you think about Fauda?" Completely forgetting that he was Palestinian. And he turned around to me and goes, "This is rubbish. Don't watch this propaganda." Yeah, and I was like, wow. I was in conflict. I remember asking you about that, yeah, and as well. So I don't know. I think sometimes people forget who they believe in or what they believe in and why they believe in it, just for the sake of enjoying something which is something that's liberating and lovely to just to watch a series of TV which may not be true or nothing. It's just like Kylian Mbappe. He's a football player who provides entertainment. He's going there for the money, most likely. He wants to go to Real Madrid. That's his dream. Is he thinking about Saudi Arabia and the regime? Probably not. Yeah. Does he care about what's going on in Saudi Arabia? Probably not. Yeah. However, at the end of the day, he's getting what he wants. Saudi Arabia getting what they want. And yeah, I mean, look at the other player that they've been talking about recently, Jordan Henderson. Okay, he was outrightly stating his disregard and all that, and all this, and his blatant, basically going on about he wasn't in agreement with what was going on in Saudi Arabia in the regime there. He wasn't really a big fan of it. He was wearing these armbands. He was promoting all this stuff over there. And then look, he's gone off to Saudi Arabia, yeah, to play, under Steven Gerrard. So it's just, I don't know. It's just one of these things which I don't think you can resolve in a debate or anything. I think it's just something you do for your personal, yeah.
Would you compare it to Tyson Fury fighting Francis Ngannou in Saudi Arabia again? all about the money. It's a nothing boxing match. Francis Ngannou is not a
Yeah,
boxer.
yeah,
Tyson Fury will pick him off, no problem.
yeah,
But Saudi
yeah,
Arabia, again, with the money and making even more money. I
yeah,
remember, and they've done a lot of boxing events over the last few years. Boxing is
yeah,
happening in Saudi.
yeah,
And Prince Nazim was over there, one of the greatest
yeah.
British boxers ever, obviously of a Yemeni background. He said,
Mm,
I'm proud to be here in Saudi Arabia, but I'll never forget the people of Yemen. And he actually
yeah,
had the guts to say that
yeah,
live on TV in Saudi Arabia. And that would have upset a few people. Big G has put some lyrics on the screen for us to
yeah.
guess. Trevor Francis tracksuits from a mush in Shepherd's Bush. What is that from? What's that from, Nero? Come on.
I don't know where it's from, but do you know what? I know what he's talking about there.
I
The
know where
Trevor
he's
Francis,
from.
yeah,
What are
the
the
Trevor
what are
Francis
the
tracksuits,
tracksuits?
yeah. I mean, well, it was like Trevor Francis was always seen in those tight tracksuits, weren't he, back in the days? And then there was, they're still selling like hotcakes in, if you go down Shepherd's Bush Market, you'll still find them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Omar's got it. Pete, do you know where those lyrics are from?
No idea. No idea.
Omar's got it. Del Boy. Those are the lyrics to the
Yeah.
opening credits in Only Fools and Horses.
Fools and
Trevor
Horses,
Francis
yeah.
tracksuit from a mush in Shepherd's Bush.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
income tax. EEV is saying, what a waste of fans' time. I think he's talking about this show. Oh, no, he means Fury Ngannou. Yeah,
Oh,
there's not even a title on the line. But what people always say, and I think it was Andy Townsend on Talk Sport, was saying to a fan who was really against it, yeah, but will you buy it? Will you watch it? And
exactly,
we can be really against it, but we'll still
exactly.
watch it. I might
And
be against
exactly,
Kylian Mbappe moving to Saudi, but I'll still watch if he's playing.
yeah, yeah.
And the marketers, they know that. They know that.
Exactly, and I'm in agreement with you there. I'm not a big fan of this fight, but I'm going to watch it. So, out of curiosity, I'm going to watch it. So, yeah, not a big fan of the
And
fight,
what do you
but
think will what do you think will happen? You've been in the ring more recently than I have.
yeah,
What do you think, as a fellow boxer? What
yeah.
do you think will happen?
Well, look, at the end of the day, it's a boxing bout, right? It's a boxing bout, and what's that other guy's name again? Ngannou, yeah,
Francis Ngannou.
Francis
Yeah.
Ngannou. So, look, I just feel like this is going to be a one-sided fight. Fury's going to look. He's a big unit, older Francis, but I just can't see if the boxing skills are going to be there for him to outwit a guy like Tyson. And Tyson's always, I remember, but Tyson's has in the past been very much underrated, and it's got to the point where now people have realised this is a guy that has not just got strength and height; he can move as well. And I think he's going to be a bit too much for Francis. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I spoke to you about something I saw the other day about Tyson, and for that reason, I started going off Tyson because I want to find out if it was the truth about what I saw in that video clip, about Tyson, what he was saying. But I've been a Tyson fan all this time. Let's see what happens. But at the same time, I can't see this going more than how many rounds is it? How many rounds is this fight? Is it 12?
I don't know. It's not a title fight, so it might not even be 12 rounds. I think it is 12 rounds, but
Is it?
it might not be. EV is
Okay.
offering to send us a link for a free stream of it, illegal, and we don't
Yeah.
tolerate criminality on this show. But there you go. Even though he doesn't want to pay for it, he still wants to watch it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is a curiosity there.
Yeah. There is.
Francis Ngannou. Welcome, Omar. Omar Triple T, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Thank God for that. What do you make of the passing of George Alagiah, one of the top
Really,
news presenters?
well, he certainly was, and he was a very nice man, and condolences to his family and beyond. Regarding the boxing and the football that you've mentioned, the football player Mbappe is maybe his name.
Mbappe, yeah, Kylian Mbappe.
So my question to you is, if you were someone living in Yemen, or if you were one of the migrant workers, that was in a position where he couldn't return to his home, whose passport was confiscated on the first day when he landed, who has not been paid for the last 5 years. So then, would you be okay with somebody turning up and having a boxing match, or a footballer? And I think they've had many boxing matches there and beyond. So is that okay for Ronaldo to turn up, or should we just say, hey, he's just a footballer who's received 300 million or whatever the price is that he's received? Does money buy all? Is that what we're saying on the show tonight? That if you have enough money, offer me enough money, I'll do anything. Is that what we're saying? That is my question to you.
Well, Mbappe's only going to do it for a year, according to Nero, with our inside information.
Sir,
And
even if he does it for 1 year, that's irrelevant. For 1 year, he's justified that place in a way. If he had said, I'm not going to go there, these people are doing terrible things to places like Yemen and the immigrants over there. And I've seen people in Saudi Arabia myself living in dire poverty, which is inexplicable, that you cannot even imagine how they are living. They're ghettos right there in the holy land of Mecca. So the question, again,
So why did you go there to spend your money? Why did you give them your money?
Well, I went there for religious reasons. It's,
that's all right.
For me, it's not a case of, plus the money that I gave them is really minuscule compared to what the money is over there. You can't turn up for religious reasons. Should we?
Oh, you sound like Bill Gates when they asked him, "What about you flying in a private jet?" And he said, "I invest a lot in offsetting the carbon of all my travel. I'm doing more for the environment." But he's a hypocrite, of course, because he flies around in a private jet, but he wants you to eat bugs to save the environment.
Well,
and you, Omar, you travel to Saudi Arabia, even though you're critical of them. Should you not be boycotting Saudi if you're so against what they do?
With all, I mean, I went there for religious reasons and work reasons, and unfortunately, I left school with no GCSEs. I grew up in one of the most deprived
Pour me a drink.
Well, if you don't mind,
for religious reasons, Muhammad Ali was banned from boxing for religious reasons.
Yeah, he may have been banned. I wasn't banned.
You will travel to Saudi Arabia no matter what. Nothing will stop you doing Umrah or Hajj, even if you're paying murderers to do it. Is that your blinkered view on religion?
My view on religion is it's a part of my faith to go to Saudi Arabia. I'm not there so I can give money to others. I'm there to do what I have to do. Plus, I was working there. I had a job there. I had to be there. Now,
keep in mind,
this was when I was 26 or 7 years old, and the wars hadn't begun. I knew of
3 years ago.
I knew of the injustices that were taking place to the migrant workers, and I saw it firsthand. Now, this is different. My life is different. Now, I'm sure the people who are on this panel now, you've had schooling, you have excellent schooling, you've probably gone to colleges or universities. I never got that opportunity. I left school with no GCSEs. And if you even went to my school, it was, it's an experience that, you wouldn't want on anyone, because
you were in Tommy Robinson's class, weren't you?
I was with Tommy Robinson, but he was an upper level. He was in a different school. He
was in the top set.
No, he went to a higher school. It was Lee Manor. So I was in Denby. You know what? In Denby High School, all the children, or the majority of the children were from immigrant families. So no one really gave a damn about us. And as Malcolm X said, that you grow up in a poor area, and in that poor area, you have poor paid teachers that give you a poor education, of which you get poor grades, and of which you get a poor paying job. And it's a cycle that goes round and round. So I don't think what I did is different. It was a job. I went to do my thing, but receiving 300 million for a year. And it's not only a case that if I chose not to go to Saudi Arabia, you're not going to say, hey, Omar stopped going to Saudi Arabia. We better all stop as well. Now, if Mbappe and this Ronaldo guy and all these other guys, they've already got millions. They don't need this money. It's just greed. They are there for greed. And it's idiots like us who say, hey, it's okay. He's gone to Saudi Arabia. it's okay. The governments of WWF or whatever they call, they are there. Boxing is there. Everything is there, and it's the new place to be. And
Omar,
it's unfortunate
what
that
do you say
nobody.
to Omar? What do you say to Julian's initial recent? Well, Julian said earlier about Prince Nassim, ex Yemeni. Yeah, he knows about all the atrocities that's been going on in Saudi Arabia towards the Yemenis people. I'm from Sri Lanka originally, and I know that they treat Sri Lankan people there in Saudi Arabia and Dubai and all that like sixth-rate citizens. I know about the number of Sri Lankan people that die from the construction of all the the big buildings there and what have you. And yet, people will still go because, like, at the end of the day, it is about the money, and they will, I think, unless you've see these atrocities firsthand, okay, and like you've seen it, you've experienced it, unless you've done that, I don't think anybody's going to really think about it. I think, look, if you speak to Kylian Mbappe and Ronaldo, I think they'll say that they disagree with all of this. But at the end of the day, for them, football is their life, and not being involved in anything like of a political nature of that kind of stuff. Interestingly, I also heard just now that you're from Luton. I know I lived in Luton 15 years, and I know the school you went to. I know Lee Manor. Is it Lee Manor you went to, or was it Denby? I know it very well.
Unfortunately, I went to Denby. Tommy Robinson was in Lee Manor. He was in Lee Manor.
Well, no. Just to correct you there, Tommy Robinson was actually a Puttridge ex-student.
Oh yes, you're right. Puttridge is. Yes.
And I will be honest, but this could be another topic in the future. But I know lots of stories about. Yeah, and a lot of stories about Tommy because from tennis. One of the mums that I used to be with, and but just on another level, on another just going on this story. I just feel like for example, me, you ask him, I know all about all of the atrocities that goes on with Sri Lankan people there and all that, but would I go to would I go to Saudi Arabia to watch the boxing, or and if in the future maybe cricket or football? Yes, I would. Where does that money go to? Yes, the Saudi Arabian government. What about my feelings in terms of how they treat the Sri Lankan community there? Totally done this. Absolutely, I'm against it. Yeah, and I guess I'm paying that money, which will contribute to this. The Saudi Arabian. The money's just going to the Saudi Arabians and what have you, but not to the migrants. But my part in all of this is just purely sport, enjoyment of sport, and I'll pay him to watch it. That's it.
Nero,
the key difference.
Nero, would you have watched South African cricket in the 1980s?
Yes.
You would have.
Yes.
Wow.
Sorry, if I could just mention quickly, there's a difference with respect for you to go to Saudi Arabia and these other fancy people going to Saudi Arabia. If Naz said, look, I don't want to go. I'm not going to go because of the injustice that you're killing innocent human beings out there in Yemen. I'm not going. That's big news. If you told me now you're not going to go to watch any football or anything, then it's not with respect. I'm not going to say, okay, this man's not going.
Yeah,
I'm gonna cancel my flight. With Naz and these other people, they have that power. Who is it? Lennox Lewis or whoever went out there to fight boxing. AJ and whoever, Tyson Fury and so on. If they say, look, we're not going over there. These people kill innocent human beings. Now that man and the government, he will then change. He may change his thinking and say, look, we need to change this. There's a man called Imran Khan who was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He said when Mohammed bin Salman came over to Pakistan, he said, look, we have 3,000 people that were arrested unjustly. And and he said it to him straight to his face with the TV, with the press conference or wherever Westminster equivalent that they had over there. He said, this is what's going on. These people are trapped and it's not fair on them to be trapped. And we ask MBS to look at this, if you don't mind, and see. The next day MBS released 3,000 people and they were on the plane on the way back, and these people, their passports were taken from them unjustly and they were returned. They came back. So I'm saying these people have power. It's not about you. Nobody, with respect, nobody would care if you went or didn't go. But with these people, they have there's a lot more than just money, and those are bribes. Let's just face it, 300 million. He doesn't deserve 300 million. There's so many other players that probably could do what he did, what he is doing. So it goes back to this. that it's not about the money. They should say, look, we don't care if you offer us 300 million. We're happy to play in Luton Town or wherever the guy plays currently. I'm not sure, France somewhere. So this is the thing. It's bigger than football. It's not about football. It's bigger than sport. It's not about sport.
I agree to one aspect. I mean, I don't know if you heard when I brought up the story about Jordan Henderson, okay, the other footballer, the English footballer, Liverpool captain, right? England captain for a bit as well. But this is a guy who blatantly before the World Cup was absolutely, stating that Saudi Arabia, bringing the whole regime down. We shouldn't be going there. He was even agreeing we shouldn't be going there. Blah blah blah
This
blah.
is Qatar. Are you talking about Qatar?
Sorry, Qatar. Yes, you're
Middle
right.
East.
But
Same
yeah,
thing.
interesting. Yeah, he was going. Yeah, but he was literally talking
But
about
that's
that.
for the
area.
LGBTQ rainbow agenda, no?
Oh yeah, that as well. The whole thing. Yeah, that's it. He was talking about the whole thing, and even now that they're talking about the fact that suddenly his ex-friend,
But then they went
Claire.
anyway, right?
Sorry.
They went anyway. They spoke out against it, but they went anyway.
They went anyway, and now look, he's one of the other players who's gone over to Saudi Arabia now as well. Irrespective of the regime there. And the thing with Omar is, I do agree. I do agree with actually Omar what he's saying, because one of the partly, I mean, look, at the end of the day, personally, I would go there, but had there been people who came out, stood out, said these things, and kind of brought some sort of an inspirational perspective to me, yeah, then I probably wouldn't have gone either. So look, I love Prince Nassim, yeah, and if Prince Nassim had come out and said, we should not be boycotting, blah 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 blah, and we shouldn't be, or we should be boycotting, sorry, and we shouldn't be going here. If Jordan Henderson said, we shouldn't be going here, blah 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 blah, Steven Gerrard, if he said that, Ronaldo, if he said all these things, and they didn't go, that would mean a lot to me, and I wouldn't go, yeah. But the fact of the matter is, they've gone, they're playing there, and I was still watching.
Nero, who has more? But you're saying that these people are powerful and they're influential. Don't we have more power if we all act together when we are united? If we all boycott something, or we all act together? Pete, you want to jump in on that?
Well, let's go back to a previous question. Do we do jobs if the job is for an organization that involves morally corrupt or morally reprehensible behavior? I think if we were really completely morally innocent and above reproach, probably 99% of the people in society wouldn't be able to find a job to do. So, because every institution, every job has morally questionable aspects to it. So I think in the interest of pragmatism, of simply.
Sorry to interrupt, but not to this extent.
Well, it depends where you draw the line. It depends where you draw the line. I mean, if I felt, well, I don't want to pay my license fee because the money is being used by the government in really bad ways, then I wouldn't have access to mainstream media. Or if I didn't want my money to go to funding a bullshit war in Ukraine through the British government, then I'm not prepared to pay my taxes in Britain, and therefore,
with respect, no one is going to see you saying, "Hey, I'm not going to pay my TV license," and then stop paying their TV license due to the war in. So we're talking about those people had a responsibility in a way. That's kind of the main question. So the question I'm posing to you now is, do you feel that they had a responsibility because of the status that we have given them? Whatever they say, we listen to. So we are giving him that. We are the people, and they may be the champion of people. So we're giving him, we are giving them that kind of status and that respect and honor. The question is, should they say, hey, we are not going to Saudi Arabia because it's a terrible thing that's happening out there? Should they have said that or not?
Well, I think if we apply one moral principle like that, we have to apply it everywhere and be consistent. And I think there are so many moral issues around the world, like the illegal coup d'etat against Imran Khan in Pakistan, or the bullshit war in Ukraine, or you know, lots of crimes that Western countries have done, then, you know, nobody would be able to do anything. So I think to make one moral case, give it publicity to the exclusion of everything else, it's just a question of which moral causes you choose. And
let me rephrase that. Should this guy Beppe, I think his name is, and Ronaldo, the other guy that's gone over there, should they go to Palestine and play for a football team out there to shed light to the Palestinian suffering and pain out there?
Well, there again, it depends what you feel is the most important moral question. I would say that the biggest moral question is, who is this global elite politically, which rules the whole world, which is holding the whole human race to ransom? It's not one nation, it's not one race, it's not one religion. It's the whole world which is languishing under this global political elite, which has control over every country. So why single out one country above another? Because the whole global political elite is culpable in what it's continuing. So it depends how you understand the world's issues and who you think's responsible.
Well, I think all of us on this panel are against injustice, and it's obvious, you know, who the oppressors are. So according to you,
I don't think it is so obvious who the oppressors are, because all we have, all the information we have for most people is the mainstream news media, which isn't telling us hardly anything about what's going on in the world. And when we look at the alternative news media, and we try to figure out, well, who's responsible for the mess the world's in, it's guesswork, because we don't know for certain. It's guesswork.
I mean,
so
we have recordings, and I was kind of reluctant to send you them today because I've sent many before. We have people whose homes are being taken. A man whose mum lived in his house or her house for 75 years. She went out to get groceries. Along come these people and they've taken over that house. Now, we know that's happening. The guy's on the news. He's on every channel. He's on YouTube. He's on everything. We know that's happened. Question is, like Roberto Carlos, he went out there, I believe, and he played for a football team. Instead of Beppe going over there for the money, should he not? And would you respect him more if he went to Palestine and said, look, I want to play in this neighborhood for this team? Would you respect him? Or would you think he's a stupid idiot for turning down 300 million?
I think it's idiotic to take sides when every single dichotomy of conflict is being stage managed on both sides. It's like every conflict in the world is fixed, stage managed, choreographed, professional wrestling. And
so if I took you out of your house today that you've lived in for 75 years, how would you feel?
I would be interested to learn, well, who's behind it? What are their motives? Who's paying for this injustice and why? And who's right at the top? I mean, you know, if the person right at the top responsible is a Bond villain like Ernst Stavro Blofeld, I would be interested to find out. And I'd also be interested in finding out, well, how can we expose that guy and depose him from as far away as possible from any levers of political power?
Well, and we have to work together. You can't do all the exposing yourself. But on the football note, did anyone here, perhaps Nero might have done, Alexander Usyk, the unified heavyweight champion of the world boxing, who also does play football, has signed for a Ukrainian football team and has played a few professional football matches. There's a professional athlete who is playing for a team just to bring, as Omar said, bring a bit of attention to them. I don't think he's going to win the league with them, but you've got a heavyweight boxer playing professional football. I mean, it's
but is he associating himself with the Ukrainian government or with the Ukrainian people?
He's Ukrainian himself, so I'm sure he feels that he's
but he's
doing
also
something
the same
for
guy
his country.
He took the flag off a black guy, didn't he? He took a black guy was very keen to put over his shoulders the Ukrainian flag, and he snatched it off him. Is he the same guy?
Yeah. But I think he wanted to. I don't know. That you're talking about when Anthony Joshua lost to Alexander Usyk for possibly the second time. Joshua made a bit of a fool of himself. Do you remember that fight, Nero?
Yeah,
At
I
the
did.
end,
Yeah, I did.
where he grabbed the microphone.
Yeah,
Usyk's just defended the heavyweight championship of the world,
yeah,
and the challenger is trying to hog the mic, or the loser.
yeah,
It was a bit of a
yeah.
weird
It was
scenario.
a very, very, very weird scenario. Yeah, I remember all that. I was actually just thinking of a few other little situations that are going on in the world right now. Like, for example, look, nobody talks about it because I remember when back in the days when the first Olympics, not first, but when one of the Olympics was held in Australia, and there was
Showing your
uproar
age,
because
Nero.
yeah, well, the people were talking about the whole, the Aborigines, and what about, and people were making a stand against that, and there was all that, should they be going out there, should they be not? And now look, all these years later, still nothing's changed, and that
Oh,
World Cup going
we've
on,
lost.
right? Oh,
Yeah. Oh, you're back in. You're back in, Nero. Nothing's
oh
changed
yeah.
in the odds. You're saying.
So I'm just saying that, look, now the Women's World Cup is going on in Australia right now, right?
Oh, is that where
And
is that where it's happening? I knew it was on. I didn't
yeah,
know where.
it's down there in Australia, and no one's talking about the Aboriginal rights. There's no protests. There's no demonstrations. People are just going there to watch this spectacle. But like I said, I think it's when things happen. I think when things happen, usually initially in an event like the like in Saudi Arabia's case, this is very early on for them in terms of what they're doing and trying to become a nation of all these big sports. I mean, they're talking about golf as becoming the next big one, and tennis. Yeah, and I think it's just we're at this very we're at a very early stage of all of this, and of course there's going to be all this talk about whether they should or not. But give it 30 years time, 20, just like these Australian Olympics and that, people probably won't be talking about it. They probably won't. And going to the question about going to Palestine, Mbappe, if Mbappe should he go to Palestine and raise the human rights that are going on down there by just playing for a football club down there? Well, the question is, why would Mbappe go to Palestine and play when actually all he wants to do, this young lad, who doesn't probably know anything about anything, he just wants to go to Real Madrid. That's all he wants to do. And this is his way out. This is his way out of PSG. And he doesn't care about what's going on. He's not being educated about this. He probably does have some, people feeding information into him saying, oh, this could be bad for you in terms of your, how people perceive you and that. But he doesn't care. He just wants to go and play football, and he just wants to go to Real Madrid. That's it. That's all it is.
And this is his loophole in order to do that.
Yeah, that's what they're saying, that there's a deal going on between Real Madrid and Saudi Arabia. Yeah, the leagues.
Fair enough. EV is saying, is it odd that Usyk is not fighting for his country in the war? I think he was out there at some point. I saw him in some kind of military attire, and then they said that he'd lost a lot of weight because he wasn't, training and eating the way he normally would because he'd been out there. How true that is, whether it's just war propaganda, we don't know. Vitaly Klitschko is the mayor of Kiev. He has been involved, no doubt. It's weird when people that are known for other things, like Prince Harry, fighting out in Afghanistan. The guy had a bullseye painted on his back. It would be a great scalp for any of the enemy to take. So,
I do know, Julian. In fact, I'm not too sure exactly when it's taking place or if it has taken place. But there was supposed to be a charity football match, which was a Ukrainian team led by the what's his name, Shevchenko, the ex-football player who then became the Prime Minister. And I think that it was a charity match between that team built from Shevchenko and a group of all-stars.
Didn't he play for AC Milan? Was he AC Milan?
He did play. Yeah, he played at AC Milan and Chelsea. But there was a charity game being organised, and I don't know if it's finished or it's coming up. But it's between a Ukrainian team that's been managed and played with Shevchenko, and against a world team as such. Yeah, and from what I gather, it was Usyk. This whole Usyk was also asked to play in this game. So I'm not too sure about the news that I'm going to have to look into this news about us, about him playing for a team in Ukraine, or whether it was actually they were talking about this charity game where I heard that Usyk was actually asked to play in that game as well. So
Can you imagine if there was a punch-up on the pitch and you've got the heavyweight champion right there? Surely no one's going to go in two-footed on the heavyweight champion of the world.
Well, that is, of course, if the rest of the world team decide to put in Tyson Fury and Joshua.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Prince Nazim to represent Yemen, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It is sad that Yemen is forgotten in all of this. I see Ukraine flags everywhere I go. Schools I go into have got the Ukraine flag flying next to the UK flag.
I think
there's no Yemeni flag.
I think it goes back to being white. I think we do ignore it, and I know I get mocked for mentioning it, but even now where I am here, people here are white. They are white people who were born and raised here in this country. I'm in Morocco at the moment, and in Tetuan, half the people are white. I think they have Spanish origin. But when a white person walks into a room from like UK or somewhere in Europe, the whole atmosphere changes. There's this kind of like inexplicable respect given to that white person, white privilege, white power. I don't know what you can call it. Even though the white people here could be lighter or whiter than that white person in England. There's something about being white. White is always right. And I think if the Yemenis, their skin was a lot lighter, if they had blonde hair and blue eyes, then we probably would be talking about this in much more depth than we currently are. Perhaps it would have been stopped a lot sooner than what it is, if you ask me.
Omar, you just hit something which I have to say. I am in agreement. And I'm not too sure. I wasn't sure where you were going, but I have to be in agreement with you on this one. And this is an interesting one, Julian, because I don't think we've ever talked about this. But the whole EDL, with Tommy Robinson, the BNP, and all that kind of stuff. I remember there was this case where, and I read this article where they talked about how somebody tried to infiltrate one of these the groups, and they did this research where people applied to become members of these parties, and these people they purposely put their names in foreign names, so they sounded whether it could be Mohammed, Indian or Pakistani or whatever it is, or there was a Singh, this and that. And interestingly enough, this is the outcome of all of it, is that if the name sounded Ukrainian, Polish, Russian, they were taken on as members into these groups. If they were a Shrikanta Palan or Tahir or Mohammed and anything like that, no, they weren't taken on, right? So, and then they claimed that their parties weren't racist, right? But what happened but when you go to these these marches or what have you, you'll never see a black face and you'll never see an Asian face. It was all white. And then the whole point of them saying they were not racist was because they, in their own words, we have Polish, Ukrainians, and all these guys in that, right? And the funniest thing was for me, the whole Singh, the Singh thing, because EDL were apparently in cahoots with the Sikhs side of things, because the Sikhs and EDL apparently had shared same values and views. So actually, strangely enough, EDL and Tommy Robinson and his party were actually going around doing all these what they call them, the political things all around England, and they were bringing on these Sikh founding members of the Sikh community to say that we were they were behind us and we're not a racist party, we allow everyone. But actually they were just basically saying, well, the Sikhs don't like the Hindus either, so let's bring them on. So they'll always be regarded as a racist party in my eyes. I don't think they've ever proved to me that these parties have never proved to me that color doesn't matter to them. It does matter to them, and I know that if a Polish person joins the BNP or the EDL, well, they will be accepted, they will be in those marches, and they won't get any sort of retribution or anything in these marches. But you put a black person, someone of color, boom, there will be uproar.
Well, there is a very well known Scottish Asian member of the EDL.
Yes.
How they let him in, I don't know. He's Asian and Scottish,
Yes.
But he's a
I think
Rangers man.
I think the guy's unwell, so perhaps we shouldn't you really discuss
Is
it.
he?
It certainly sounds unwell, and I think
But
that's
Tommy
certainly
Robinson's
not an
not.
example for all. But it's interesting you say that the Sikhs are aligned with the EDL, and I've seen some videos in which you are correct that happens because they have apparent goals that are the same, or their parent links,
Yeah.
or what. So I'm asking you, what are those links? What do they have in common, really?
My enemy's enemy is my friend. And I have to say,
So
very,
is the
very few.
Muslim-
I've never seen any, and any Sikh I've ever met has been anti-racist. But that's as far as I go with that. But I'm sure there are exceptions to every rule. Fuzzy is saying, stop racism. Stop talking about it. All right, Fuzzy. You
Well,
can come on.
I have an interesting, well, I don't know if it's interesting. I have a particular idea about white supremacism, if you like, which is from a book by a guy called Gerard Diamond called,
Thank God.
and it's called Guns, Germs and Steel, a short history of everybody for the last 13,000 years. And I haven't read it, but I got the gist of it, maybe from the back cover. And what he was saying was,
Oh, what a book review. Go on.
what he was saying was that the reason why at the moment the whites of Europe and therefore from North America have been top dogs for a few hundred years or maybe longer is simply luck. Because if you analyze where the natural resources are, the geography of where the countries are, the only reason why the whites at the moment are top dogs is simply an accident of geography and history and natural resources. And if those factors hadn't been as they are, it would be, Black Africans or Middle Eastern people. So it just proves that there is no racial superiority. It's just luck.
And at some point throughout history, it would have been other people.
Yeah, whoever enjoyed such factors, they would turn out to be top dogs.
I mean, I think Europe and North America are kind of at the tail end of their
Exactly.
right. Yeah, we're moving into a new era.
Well, I think what the area we're moving into slowly but surely is an era where, as Martin Luther King pointed out, we're entering an era where nobody is judged by the color of their skin, and if they're judged at all, it's the content of their character.
I hope so.
I think mankind in general is gradually edging towards a realization that we are all one human family. Nobody's superior to anybody else. Essentially, and
but it's not about being superior. If you look at people, if white people came to Morocco, if they came to Kenya or something, the amount of respect and honor that's given to the white people. Now, you mentioned the top dog, and that's fine, but there's kids out there who in England who were born and they're 10 years old and they love white people, and I'm sure you're aware of that.
Why?
The experiment done by the doll, where the experiment was stated, and most of the kids, I think 90-something%, yes, they took the white Barbie and they left the black doll and said the black doll was ugly. So it's not really about being top dog. They're not aware who's top dog or anything. They're not watching news and TV and sports and everything. They're just kids. So why is it?
But have they absorbed that from colonialism, Omar? Is that a mindset that's been drilled into them through osmosis?
But they were born and raised in America. What colonialism did they see? Nothing.
The TV.
So before 10, you can be brainwashed. The TV is a brainwashing machine. Is that what you're saying? I don't know.
Absolutely. There was an Alice Roberts BBC documentary about how girls and boys are socialized, and she found that from a very, very early age, as infants and toddlers, before our consciousness and our memory kicks in, we as toddlers, we identify with the parent with the same sex, and we absorb all the attitudes, all the values, all the morality, all the behavior of the parent that we know that we are the same gender as, even before we start thinking. So any toxic masculinity or toxic femininity or virtuous masculinity or virtuous femininity, we absorb it even before we start remembering anything or thinking anything. So these kind of cultural influences from our parents, they come into us very, very early on before we're aware of anything. So I think we have to do a lot of, I don't know, my impression is that all of us have to do a lot of, I don't know, self-analysis and begin to unpick and unlearn stuff that we didn't realize we'd absorbed already, if that makes any sense.
Well, unfortunately, in a town called St. Albans in Hertfordshire, where I spent most of my youth, there was
on the playground as well. I spent. Sorry, go on.
There was an imam type person, and I met him at the Global Peace and Unity event. He seemed like a lovely guy. Unfortunately, or justifiably, he was arrested for abusing a child in a sexual manner when that child was 6. Now, I was horrified about the story. Obviously, I'm horrified that that took place. But how did that 6-year-old know anything? How did that 6-year-old remember anything? And I spoke to one of the journalists that you're aware of. Her name is Zarina. And she told me that her friend who's Somalia was sexually abused by her brothers at the age of 3. And so you have a point here that there is something, there are traumas, there are terrible things that happen to these people. And you are right. They do stick in their minds. Now, regarding the TV...
Yeah, if not in this conscious mind, in the subconscious mind. So I feel, I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe that in our subconscious we remember everything that's happened to us, even if our conscious memory can't get access to it.
That sounds very religious. Is there a religious affiliation to that? Yeah, are you saying something on that? So
no, I got
end time?
No, I got this idea from Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. That in our soul we have a complete memory of everything we've ever experienced.
So we can be judged on that soul then, can't we? If we did bad or good.
What you mean, if we can't remember what we've done, we're not guilty?
No, if we've done terrible things. So I'm saying that someone, if there is a soul and if there is that consciousness, we can be judged when we leave this world. There could be something else. There could be that thing, that subconsciousness that goes on somewhere else, and we could be judged if we did bad things. As you said, we can remember everything.
I believe that. Yes, I think we will be. Yeah, and I think God is a perfect judge. So that when all of us do get judged, we will be judged on what we did and what we were conscious of what we did. Yeah. Does that make sense? Are we off soon? 58 minutes.
Yeah, we are in the last. We're in the final round. So anything you want to say it now, or forever hold your peace. I want to thank Nero for suggesting the. I got it from him. I stole his ideas tonight, and it's great to see you on the screen, Nero.
You'll be judged.
Yeah, we're all going to be judged. Judge not, lest you be judged.
Yeah.
And we'll do it all again next Monday.
Jules, I just wanted to say, Omar.
Yeah.
Omar, it seems like Omar has been following me around. But we go from Luton to St Albans now. But I'm a St Albans guy. Yeah. He's everywhere I've been. I don't know where he's.
You're going to go to South Africa next, Nero.
Yeah.
Go and see him in South Africa.
And also wanted to make sure very quickly, just before I go, Big G kept coming on with some messages, and he did say that the EDL and BNP has got some black members and some mixed race members. He's absolutely right, actually, because one thing I have forgotten is, and you know very well about my musical taste, Jules, and what I was brought up in and where I was brought up. And, you know, even then, when there was the racism going on back in the days, skinheads and all that, and the white, whatever, but there was also black and, mixed race, people involved in that whole racism thing. So,
and that's linked to the ska musical movement, right?
Yeah. And then, it's association with skinheads and the fact that they just had a hatred towards Asian people at the time because of the way that, there's just different cultures. I think, what's your friend there in the yellow top called?
Pete.
Yeah, I mean, Pete was talking about cultural differences and understanding and what have you. And look, it's the way that you've been brought up. If your parents believe in something, and they pass it on generation to generation. And I know a lot of black folk who are very, should I say, they've never got on well with Asian people. Yeah, they just haven't. Whereas, of course, Julian, I'm friends with nearly a lot of my friends are all black. Yeah, so it's how you've been brought up and how they perceive you.
And the reason they don't get on with Asian people is because they love white people too much. They want to sit with white people and say, look at those Asians. They are black. They are the N-word. We are with you. We are like you. And I saw a lot of that when I was growing up.
Really? Oh, wow. Anyways, yeah. I mean, look, this is another topic.
BNP, they're Uncle Toms. A lot of Uncle Toms in the BNP, the black ones that we have.
Yeah. But I know. Look, this is another topic we're going on to. But
we'll do it all again next Monday. Feel free in the comments, anyone watching, to suggest topics for next week or in future. And I hope we'll see you next Monday. And remember, you can join the conversation by clicking the link in the description. It's been Lessons for Life on a Monday night. We were here. We are gone. Later.